So 4 minutes 30 is the latest gap as they came over the top of that climb. We've been through Humbug Scrub now. We've left it about 15 kilometres, 9 miles or so behind us. Damien Howson, I think he's just glued to the front. Nobody helping him. He's keeping good tempo, neither getting closer, but more importantly, not dropping back.
Certainly, he's got him pegged at 4.5 minutes. There's around about just on 55, 56 miles to go to the finish, 92 kilometres, and his job will be to peg the advantage at that distance, so that once they start to get closer to the finish line, they'll get some assistance from the other teams who've got sprinters. Now, there are quite a few sprinters this year in the Santos Tour Down Under. We've talked a lot about Caleb Ewan, Peter Sagan, and of course Andre Greipel, but the French have got a very good sprinter on board, David Chimolai. He's normally a lead-out man for the French national champion, but he's a very good sprinter in his own right, and you can see FDJ there sitting very close to the front of the main field, being attentive.
Will Clark, Bowden has dropped back, the third member of this breakaway. As soon as they came over the climb of Humbug Scrub, he decided to sit up. Wisely, he took the advice from his team manager, Andrew Christie Johnson, who is managing the Uni SA team in this race, which is in effect the Australian national squad. But he's also his team manager when he's riding on his professional team as well. So he obeyed Andrew and they went back to the group. These two keeping going, 4 minutes 30 the gap. It's an awful long way, and I think the downfall will be because we create these 3 finishing big circuits, and that's why they're not going to hold off this main field.
Looking down there on the Wirra Valley National Reserve, it's a beautiful part of the country. It's nice to see that there's plenty of water down there as well.
It is indeed, because we're in high summer now in South Australia. It can become very desert-like at this time of the year. And as we go along this week towards the finish in Adelaide on Sunday, the forecast is rocketing. High of 41 degrees down the road is expected, and that's well over 105 degrees Fahrenheit for our American viewers. First World Tour event for Nicholas Lamini. This is a neutral service car that's come up. He's called for water.
Well, it's certainly not as hot as it was on this stage around about 12 months ago, because it went over 40 degrees Celsius, and the race organisers actually had to remove one lap of the race and shorten the race, and Caleb Ewan came out of the pack to get his second victory on this finishing line. Today, I'm sure he would like to make it 3 wins in a row.
Just looking at Damien Howson, 25 years of age. But 5 years ago, he was the under-23 world time trial champion. So he's got the credentials to sit on the front and pedal on his own. And he's been told that's his job. His team are sitting further down, just looking after Caleb Ewan. Keep on taking that fluid, Damien. He's won big win, and it was only the first win as a professional. It came last year. He won the opening stage of the Jacob Herald Sun Tour into Falls Creek, which is in the state of Victoria, and he led the race from start to finish to take out the final victory. Big moment, and that got him his first ride in the Tour de France as well.
I just keep looking down at the length of this main field, and although the gap has remained very stable at 4.5 minutes, it is in fact now starting to tickle down just a little bit over race radio. Race radio are indicating it's come down to just over 3.5 minutes, and that's indicated by the fact that the main field have been stretched out into an extremely long line.
Yes, there's no urgency here. They're waiting till they swing onto the finishing circuit. We've gone down through Humbug Scrub. We're heading to the far end of the course at Kersbrook, and then we'll swing north bound for Williamstown. It's at Williamstown where we enter the circuit, but once we see the finish line at Lyndoch, we'll do 3 full circuits of that. Around about 26 kilometres a lap for those finishing circuits. Now you drive down this road in the late hours of the afternoon into the dusk, and the kangaroos will abound, which always fascinates the visitor to Australia, to see kangaroos hopping all over the place. But if you're driving your car, be very careful. They haven't quite learned the crossing code on the highways here. Main field. There's 130 riders taken the start for this 20th year of the Santos Tour Down Under. 2 non-starters on the Lotto team. Bjorn Lambrecht didn't start because he hadn't done enough time on the notification list for the whereabouts test. He's supposedly must do 42 days. He hadn't done that. And Jens de Boucher, we're still waiting to hear why he never started this morning, but that was reported from the race start. Damien Howson on the front, 2 riders in the lead, and the gap just on 3 minutes and 50 seconds. A little bit of a bottle here being offered. This is Dlamini, who got the lead in the Suru King of the Mountains. He's actually refusing a bottle at the moment. Mind you, he is African, Paul. Cape Town, by the way, which is where Nicholas comes from, are in terrible trouble with a water shortage. They're in a drought to end all droughts, and by March the city will officially have no water.
That's a really tough thing. In the whole of the southern part of the continent, there's been an incredible drought for the last 4 or 5 years, which is amazing, really, because when I went on safari in Uganda just before Christmas, I got stuck in the mud because there was too much rain.
Yeah, the world is crazy right now, isn't it? Bit of food. Very wise man, Nicholas, getting all of the feeling of his first big World Tour event as he rides for this team. He's only 22 years of age, a long career ahead of him. And here's his first ever visit down under in South Australia.
What this team has done over the years since it was formed, originally it was MTN Quebecer. It has actually given a lot of African riders from the whole of the continent some inspiration to try and rise up to get themselves onto the international circuit. And it has created great names like Daniel Tekla-Hymenot, and of course now the name we'll be talking about maybe for the rest of this tour is Nicholas Dlamini.
Just watching Will Clark there, ferreting around in his back pocket for food. A very wise man when you're in a breakaway. Well, let's hear from Will as he talks about breakaways.
Not everyone's, suited to, finishing the race up a climb or, doing the bunch sprint. So there's different riders, try and win in different ways. And I guess the early breakaways won. It's not always it's always a bit of a gamble, and you never actually know when it's going to work or when it will work. So there's different roles for different riders, and having someone in the break out of your team also relieves a bit of pressure on your teammates. They can sort of take it a little bit easier knowing that they've got someone represented up the road, and can also, if they've got a teammate up the road, can also help later. Maybe if it's a hard stage, they can get over the climb and help the leader. It does depend on how you're feeling. If you've got good legs, if you can get in the break. There's also sometimes a bit of luck being in the right position. Sometimes you can try to get in the break 100 times and then you can still miss it. But yeah, so it's a little bit about timing. Yeah.
Well, let's hope that Will Clark has got his timing right here. There he is. He knows exactly what to do. He is a breakaway expert in many ways, and he's got in the mood. Now we're in the Barossa Valley now, and there's the vineyards on the left shoulder of the riders. We'll see plenty of those as we make our way through towards Lindop. We've left Williamstown for the moment. The peloton are arriving in Williamstown. The gap is just on 2 kilometres between the peloton and that 2-man breakaway route. Riding there, Paul, for an hour and 3/4 now.
And I put them at inside of 2 hours to go down towards the finisher. But looking down from this altitude and from the helicopter shot there, you can see that peloton is really now starting to get itself stretched down into a very long line. The Barossa Valley, by the way, earns its name from the Battle of Barossa, when the British were trying to invade Cadiz way back in the 1800s. And in fact, it was Colonel William Light who wanted to give the name to the Barossa Valley after the battle. In fact, that the British did not win on that occasion.
No, but Colonel Light was very much responsible for the formation of the city of Adelaide, that's for sure. The red jerseys are on the Bahrain Merida team, and they've got good finishes on that squad. They seem to be taking close order. The sky blue tops are the old Russian Katusha team. It's now a Swiss registered team, same sponsor, Katusha. Alpecin, but they've changed their colours very slightly. One Australian on the squad this year, and that's Nathan Haas, and he's looking for a good finish in this race.
It seems an awful long time ago since they in fact founded that Katusha squad, and the name Katusha coming from the old Russian rocket launcher.
Yes, and Robin McEwen ended his career riding with Katusha just before he moved across briefly to the Green Edge squad, and he'll be joining us shortly in commentary. He's won 12 stages of this race before he retired. He specialises in 12 stages of everything really. He won 12 stages of the Giro d'Italia and 12 stages of the Tour de France. He's hot-footing from the start of Port Adelaide, and he'll be here soon. 83 kilometres, almost down to the last 50 miles of the stage. We're on the circuit, but we haven't started the last 3 laps. We have to get down and see the finishing line. Tell us all about the watts, Paul. Explain those to us.
Well, we're getting feedback from the wattage of the riders. 180 watts is the wattage being produced by Will Clark. Now, normally if you're riding a training ride, you'd ride between 150 to 200 watts. So he's not really going that hard at the moment. This is just a steady, long ride. Once you see riders start to get up to 300, 400 watts, that's when they really are starting to wind up the pressure. The average speed at the moment, the current speed, sorry, is 43 kilometers an hour, which is about 25 to 26 miles an hour.
And I'm just hearing from the radio out on the course, 2 minutes 25 they're saying now, so it's come down a little bit more. It's all a matter of where the timekeepers are pressing the buttons there, but it seems to be agreeing with us just now. 2:25. Long straight road this now. We're riding due north at the moment, heading straight down to the finishing line. And you see why we think these two will be caught. That is a long road, Paul, and when they come to the last lap, if they're still clear, they're going to be in the sight of the peloton.
Well, at these speeds, that also gives you an indication of the actual physical gap between the two riders in the front and the main field, and it's about 1.2 kilometers, I would say, at the moment.
Yep, probably right. Peloton just huddling together, certainly not for warmth. Today it is hot and getting hotter as the week rolls on. This is a good route this year, a similar route to previous years in many ways. The penultimate stage is the Wollonga Hill, where Richie Porte, who is the defending champion of this race, remember him having that horrific crash in the Tour de France, and he hasn't raced since until this week. Well, he's down there, he looks fit, but he really has been the king of Wollonga for the last 4 years. Nobody has beaten him to the finishing line on that climb. So he'll be looking to do something special on Saturday there.
Well, he will, but the team is under a lot of pressure. They brought a very strong team to the Santos Tour Down Under, in fact, with 3 previous winners on board, Richie Porte, Simon Gerrans and Rowan Dennis. So when it comes down to if they make a tactical error, they've always got a replacement. But I think psychologically they'd like to get a victory here for Richie Porte, because if we cast our minds back to the Tour de France last year, that was a very dramatic crash that saw him exit. Little chat there right in the middle is the white jersey with the rainbow bands around the middle. Peter Sagan, already a winner this year in his first race of the season.
Yes, and he was very happy. He didn't expect to do it. He shocked himself, but you know, he always says he's shocked when he wins, but I think deep down he's very confident, Peter Sagan. Great entertainer. Paul Show missed the interview on Sunday because Sagan did a lap of honour on his bike on the 2-kilometre circuit, and he never came back.
Always a man who loves to endear himself to the crowd. Now, the other team you can see riding together in the pale blue and white jerseys there, Quick Step, they're looking after Elia Viviani. And interesting to learn, Phil, that he once he got down here, he actually went and trained on the Adelaide velodrome to get himself a little bit more speed back into his legs. Ramonas Navadauskas in the peloton riding at around about 34 kilometers an hour, so that's not very much more than just hovering on 20 miles an hour.
I was doing that myself yesterday on the bike, so they'll have to pick that up. Heading into the 50-mile markers. Yeah, it's going back up again now, according to Race Radio. It's gone up to 2:30. Not as to be expected. It is the calm before the storm. The boys know when they see the finish line banner just ahead of them now. That then they're on the last 3 laps. It's around about 70 kilometres, 72 kilometres they'll be spending on the finishing laps.
Well, the peloton now are actually quite happy to have a breakaway off the front, because it actually calms the ardours of the riders in the main field. There are no more attacks, and it actually keeps the peloton going along at a fairly steady pace. That's Marcel Seeberg there, one of the tallest riders in the main field. He measures in at about 1.90 m, and he's one of the big, strong lead-out men who will be looking after Andre Greipel a little bit later on.
Here we are. This is will be a nice view of the finish as we come in a couple of laps time. 3 laps to go when we get through under the banner. And as we've seen in the past, it is a long straight, very exciting sprint side to side on this road as we come straight down to the finishing line in Lindok. There's the 1 kilometre marker for them. It's a perfect sprint finish, but these two are happy to be seeing the finishing line for the first time, clear of the field by 2.5 minutes. Little spin across some of the best Shiraz in Australia as we pick up the peloton. There's no racing being done there, but they'll be well aware of the time gap, well aware that that breakaway is not running away, well aware there's only 2 of them. They're in no hurry just now. Certainly not this man. He entertained at a private dinner party last night for major sponsors and the government of South Australia, and he was very entertaining.
But he has brought an extremely powerful squad here, Phil, when you look down along the names. And he's got Daniel Osser alongside him. He's got Sam Bennett in his squad. And they're all... last year, in fact, he finished 2nd on 3 occasions in the Santos Tour Down Under. And every time he was, in fact, trying to help his teammates to win.
Yes, they come down underneath the banner. He was chatting there with Jay McCarthy, who was placed here last year, and I think could be the winner this year if Peter Sagan gets his way. Time to grab a bottle. As they pass through the line and heading out. I think they've gone through the line and heading out now on this long straight road where we will turn left at Sandy Creek, and then there's a special time bonus sprint just around the corner at Sandy Creek in Cockatoo Valley. Well, the organisers hoping to crack the 1 million spectator mark in its 20th year. We're hovering at 870,000 as the record, and we'll see. We had 103,000 on the opening night of this race. It wasn't part of the Santos Tour Down Under because of international regulations. It was a standalone circuit race.
Well, you can see the riders moving through the heat haze. It's crept up to just a shade inside of 30 degrees Celsius, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And the riders are, I think, being very careful and taking on board plenty of liquid. There you can see Simon Gerrans with the green and gold bands around his sleeve there. 4 times a winner of this event, and moving across to Team BMC Racing to look after the guy on the far side of him, also for BMC, Richie Porte.
Richie, the defending champion. Richie Gerrans coming to his side. New team for Simon Gerrans. 4 times the winner, as Paul said, Team BMC. And he's here for one reason, and that's to help Richie Porte have a great ride in July's Tour de France. Well, clearly under no pressure. They've seen it all before. But I remember Simon Gerrans winning this race by a single second once, and it was all down to a sprint bonus along the road. So these little time bonuses can be useful, because this race is very often won by a handful of seconds. We've even had it won with the same time, and they've had to split it on countback.
And I think a lot of riders will be attentive in the approach to the first sprint of the day at Cockatoo Valley, which is coming up in around about 3 kilometres time. There are 2 riders clear in the breakaway. They'll take the first 2 points, but there will be a single second available for the first rider to cross the line from the main field. And I think it was 2 years ago when we went through Cockatoo Valley. It was Simon Gerrans who went across the line in 3rd place on both occasions, just grappling and taking away those 1 second time bonuses.
there could be gold dust on a race over this short period, and basically only a couple of days when you can really attack on the climbs. These are the two leaders again, looking quite lonely out here in the country. In the main field, 300 metres from the start of the 3 circuits of Lindok. Damien Howson on the front, and Avadauskas has dropped in behind him. They're almost putting the brakes on to not go past Damien at the moment. That looks like Nathan Haas who's come through on the front there for the moment. Now there is a 1 second time bonus, of course, when we get to the sprint point, but that is still 5 miles or 8 kilometres ahead. So it's still 2 versus the rest. Located 600 kilometres north of Adelaide is the ruggedly spectacular Northern Flinders Ranges. It's home to the multi-award-winning Wilderness Sanctuary as well. Arkaroola is its name. With over 160 species of birds, it's a mecca for bushwalkers. And for those who like to cover a few more kilometres, well, you can take the world-famous four-wheel drive tour along the rugged ranges to the top. Looking at the feed here for the peloton, we're giving you in slow motion as the boys reach out and grab the vital product of water on this hot day in South Australia. And rejoin the two leaders now. The sun is high above the riders now, putting the shadows directly under the wheels. Getting to be the hottest part of the day. Now our broadcast is going to many countries around the world where we're catching all various time zones, but right now here in Lindok, South Australia, it's just after 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Now Will Clark of Tasmania, fair to say Will's enjoying the hot sun of South Australia. It doesn't get that hot in Tasmania, although I have to say they've had a wonderful summer down there this last few weeks.
Just having a quick look at his pedalling style there. He's also using a very small gear, and every time we've had a chance to glimpse in with the information provided to us by Velon, his wattage has been hovering just around about the 200 watts. So it's almost, if you like, just a training ride. 3 kilometres now to go to the sprint point, the first time that the riders will go through Cockatoo Valley.
Just saw the signboard there announcing the sprint coming up. We'll go through it in Cockatoo Valley, 74 kilometres covered. When we get there, of this 145 today. It'll be interesting if Will tries to make amends and lift the small time bonus and the small prize towards the points competition. That's the green jersey. Now you notice also there that litter zone start, because many of our viewers often say these guys are throwing stuff off, littering the countryside. Well, I can tell you these major races make sure everything is collected from the roadside. It's usually gone before they get there, actually, because the spectators take it all home. Sharp left turn as we turn now towards Sandy Creek, at Sandy Creek, towards Cockatoo Valley.
Well, I better just throw this one in here, fellas. We're going through Sandy Creek because the Sandy Creek Hotel, which is about 120 years old, which is pretty old for Australia, has the reputation of having sold the largest volume of beer in a single day, and that was at the end of World War II when the ceasefire was announced, because there was an American army post not too far away from here, and everyone came down for a pint.
And what a great celebration, the end of a world war. My goodness me. Unfortunately, the beer is too cold for an Englishman. Nothing like a nice warm pint of beer in London, Paul. 3 minutes 15 the gap, 71.7 kilometres still to race to the line, 2 kilometres to the first time bonus points of this race. The first man across gets 3 seconds off his overall time for the race, 2 and 1 second. So there'll be a good sprint for third place.
They will be very attentive, I would expect, and you know, Simon Gerrans, who has been brought across to Team BMC as the captain on the road, he will be very attentive, and in the past he's been very clever at positioning himself to grab these single seconds here and there, and in fact that's why he's gone on to win this race on 4 occasions. He's a little bit of a dark horse here because theoretically he's come along onto Team BMC to look after the interests of the leader of that squad, Richie Porte, so it'll be interesting to see how they handle the sprint for 3rd place.
I believe BMC will try and do this unless the actual sprinters they don't expect to win the race open up for it. We'll see. Damien Howson has been on the front now for the best part of an hour and a half. The breakaway establishing soon after the start. Damien Howson establishing about 15 minutes into the race. The sacrificial lamb of Mitchelton Scott. Mitchelton, by the way, is another winery, but in the rival state of Victoria. And they've got themselves their own World Tour team. Bahrain Media, Merida, in the red jerseys there. A lot of different colours to get used to. Even the Lotto team have slightly changed their colours as well. I'm just seeing going through there is the Japanese rider, one of 2 Japanese riders in the race. That is Yukiya Arishio. The other one is Fumi Beppu, different team. 1 kilometre. Well, having seen the way that the South African rider Nicholas Lamini made the sprint up the climb. Hello, little bit of a move here. Well, that will scuttle the 1 second 3rd place requirement. He's made the turn towards at Sandy Creek now, towards Cockatoo.
Well, again, that's a very clever little move to try and steal away the single time bonus second.
Laurent Didier, the Luxembourger, in the race.
Pretty clever move, and he caught them all napping.
Looks like he's cooking the banana in the back pocket there in the midday sun.
But he's one of the riders who in fact came to Australia early on to get himself acclimatised not only to the difference in time but also to the temperature, and just grabbing a single second here could be very important later on in the week, because Laurent Didier is a pretty good climber.
Well, he's certainly one of the most experienced riders in the race.
And he might be one of the riders they won't be too keen. In fact, I was going to say to chase him down, but you can see here, in fact, you've got Katusha Alpecin have launched a rider off the front of the peloton, thinking about that point. And also it looks like there's a rider from the United Arab Emirates also a little bit further back. So these riders are seeing the sneaky advantage of trying to grab themselves a single second.
So the 2 riders here coming to the line now, they may or may not sprint. We don't control what's happening in the bike lane. So what may happen here?
Yeah, so as you can see, sitting in 2nd position, the South African rider Lamini. He's already got himself points, but he's in fact allowed Will Clark to go across the line in 1st place. Will Clark will take maximum points, 5 points there, and a 3-second time bonus. 3 points for Lamini and a 2-second time bonus. But behind, it will be interesting to see who can just hold on from the main field to try and grab the single second which is still remaining, because this race is and has very often been decided by mere seconds. Their advantage over the main field is stable. There is Didier, and it looks to me as if that's Rui Costa. Now that's a very clever move by Rui Costa, a former world champion, a former winner of the Tour of Switzerland. So Rui Costa has got across the gap there.
Well, that could be significant, Paul.
Pretty clever.
He's very much a candidate for the final victory. A 1 second. It will be an interesting move, to say the least.
And Jonathan Restrepo is the rider from Katusha Alpecin. He's a Colombian rider, but he's a very fine sprinter, and he's seen that as a danger because he's a teammate of Nathan Haas, who I think has got aspirations to also ride high in the overall standings at this race. Didier goes again.
Restrepo was very active in the People's Choice Classic, and in fact he was the best young rider in this race last year with a high overall finish of 10th. So he can ride very well, and he may be looking for himself here. It's only 1 second, and it's only the first sprint of the Santos Tour Down Under. But this race has been won by 0 seconds in the past, so it could count. And they recognise Restrepo as a danger as well.
Well, you know, it's just amazing in the early part of this race just how seriously they're taking a sprint for 3rd place in an intermediate time bonus sprint.
Well, he's one of the few Colombian cyclists who really can turn a fast pedal, and look at that. They can't get near him here, I don't think. Oh dear me, and very annoyed as well.
That was Rui Costa going across the line. He thought that he was playing a crafty tactical move there, but he just didn't have the speed to get around Jonathan Restrepo, who rode a very good race here last year in the Santos Tour Down Under.
He did indeed, and he's got himself a second. One finger. Oh, that's hurt me, he says. Time to get back in the bunch. Rui Costa. I don't think they'll persist.
Oh, bright blue skies here in Adelaide. Welcome back to Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. Stage 1 of the Santos Tour Down Under, the 20th edition of Port Adelaide to Lyndoch, 145 Ks it is, and we're about midway through it as we welcome Robbie McEwen. It's been interesting so far, Rob.
It has been, and it's been a bit of a typical stage 1 so far, that early break, but of course everybody's focused on what's going to happen later on. But there's a lot going on.
Yeah, well, let's talk tactics and start with that exact topic, because everyone's sort of looking at, you know, Sagan and Caleb Ewan and Andre Greipel and who will win this sprint, but there is so much in that 145k sprint.
Well, there's a lot to play for. We've seen them fight out the King of the Mountain sprint, but the intermediate sprints, which we also just saw, these bonus time seconds can be so crucial when it comes down to the final day of the race. We've seen riders separated on the same time on a countback, so that's why they sprint so hard, trying to get the 3, 2 and 1 second time bonuses. And last year we saw Jay McCarthy going really hard. Missed out so far. We just saw that last one. Riders intent on getting something, breakaway of 2 in front, but the rest fighting so hard for just 1 single second, and they'll do it again on the next lap.
Caleb Ewan's words earlier today when you spoke to him, they were all very positive, but his demeanour wasn't quite as sort of peppy as it has been the last few years. Did he get knocked around a little bit in the People's Choice Classic? You think not winning that?
He said he didn't really get a bash to his confidence, but I think just a little touch-up, and I think it's going to make him pretty hungry for today. But if we look back at how he's won this stage, the 2 times we've been here, you look at the arrow, that is Caleb Ewan. Now, coming in, it hasn't been your typical lead-out behind his own team. He's chosen others. On this occasion, he was following Mark Renshaw in the white and black, just on the left of that head group, and then finds the space, makes an acceleration, gets down deep and low into that aerodynamic sprint position, and just rocketed away from them. But we've often seen him come off the back of his own team and really textbook sprints. But the next year, he thought, well, I'm onto a winning formula here in Lyndoch, so he followed another team again without using his own team as the lead-out. They position him, put him in a good spot, keep him out of the wind. After that, he does his own thing. On this occasion, he had to squeeze through a bit of a smaller gap, but still got through. He's pretty small, he can fit through just about any gap, and held off 2 other fast finishers. But pretty much he's done it the same way on both occasions, coming from behind, sizing them up, and then hitting the gas pedal. But I think today, and he said it himself, my team's stronger this year for the sprint. So I think we're going to see Mitchelton Scott play a more active role in the actual last sprint, that final few hundred metres, and really try and launch him. But he's going to have to watch out for the gorilla. And of course, Sagan, who drew first blood the other night.
And Andre Greipel, just having him there, just having his presence there. And they're completely contrasting human beings and athletes, aren't they? One's a bit older, one's a lot bigger, and one's done so much around the world.
Well, Greipel, he's here not just to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the race. He's here to try and take his 17th stage win in Tour Down Under history, and he hates getting beaten. I watched him the other night when he took on Sagan and Ewan in the People's Choice Classic, and after the finish, we did see him congratulate Sagan, but before that, he gave his handlebars a good bash because he's not happy to get beaten. I've seen on his face he's hungry for a big win.
Yeah, the looming gorilla in Lyndoch. They're not native to Lyndoch, but he is here today. Robbie McEwen, great to talk tactics. All right, we're going to get back to commentary because it's intriguing what's happening there. Stage 1 of the Santos Tour Down Under. Let's get back to Phil and Paul.
2 leaders still just doing what we call bit and bit, helping each other through and off, sharing the pace through the valleys here. We've headed through Cockatoo Valley. We're bound back to Williamstown now, where we'll turn sharp left and complete the first of 3 circuits.
Well, one thing I can tell you about these roads, they're very heavy roads. Just a quick glimpse there at some of the information we're getting. You can see 2¼ hours the riders have been in the saddle, and coming down to 64 kilometres. We're about 90 minutes to go down towards the finishing line. But these roads are what I call heavy roads. They're a little bit like the roads of the Midi Libre used to be in the south of France. They're a chip and tar seal, and sometimes it feels as if you've got glue on the outside of the tyres. They're not fast roads.
Yes, you're absolutely. We could be in Provence, couldn't we? Except for the eucalypt trees, of course. Certainly looks as barren at this time of the year. Will Clark from Tasmania. It's only a small little island, but boy, they turn out some great athletes in all sports. Will Clark being no exception there. And a long journey to Australia for the first time for the man from Cape Town in South Africa, and that is Nicholas Lamini. Bicycle has been his ticket into a fabulous sport, and great ability he has too. Now there's the 2 riders, Will Clark and Lamini. It's all about team tactics, you know, for these riders on World Tour teams. So let's hear from a former winner of this race on team tactics, Rowan Dennis.
Richie's one of the best climbers, if not the best climber in the world, and Garrow's one of the best monument one-day races Australia's ever produced. So myself, time trialer, there's no time trial here, so that's a bit of a shame for me. Otherwise, I'd be really keen to take the leadership. But look, it's it's not easy, obviously, to juggle the 3 different strengths, but it's also a good thing that we've got such a strong lineup.
That's Rowan Dennis. Yes, he's a very good time trialist, isn't he, Paul? He holds the record in the Tour de France for the fastest ever prologue.
No, he's a very special rider, and he can climb as well, because a couple of years ago we saw him win the USA Pro Challenge in Colorado. But it's a really special squad they've got, but they've got responsibility. They're one of the biggest budget teams in the world, and they realise that once at any point, if this race comes under pressure, they have to assume control.
Yeah, they're looking down there. You can see Tom Bowley, number 2, and number 7 is Rowan Dennis, who we just heard from there. And just in front of Rowan Dennis is Patrick Bevan, who's a New Zealand rider now on this American BMC, American Swiss racing team. And it's a very strong team. Of course, we're only seeing here 7 of their squad, which will be around about 27 riders spread around the world. It's a team that is going to take the race to the other riders in the Tour de France, I feel, this summer. That's the European summer, of course. This is the Australian summer, and boy, it's hot.
It's getting very warm today, just over about 30 degrees Celsius. It's expected to get warmer and warmer during the course of this week. The organisers hoping that it doesn't reach the 41 degrees Celsius, which is being forecast for Thursday. But hopefully, as we're going down towards Victor Harbour, it'll be slightly cooler down there. Just a quick thought for this young rider, Nicholas Lamini. I'd actually forgotten, Phil, that he is, in fact, a very good climber, because he won the King of the Mountains competition in the amateur version of the Tour of Italy.
Wow, that says a lot, because even though it's the amateur version, the mountains are still as high as the professional version.
Yeah, certainly he's obviously got a pretty impressive pedigree on his back. And just 22 years of age.
Beautiful blue skies, perfect. And now, funnily enough, last week it was quite chilly here, believe it or not, and the weather didn't warm up and there was rain, but it's swinging now, and people are freaking a little bit when they see the weather forecast predicted for the weekend, soaring up to 41 degrees. That would cause an alteration in the race conditions, because there are weather restrictions now at international cycling level. That's one problem, which is down the road. 3 minutes 20 seconds the gap. They're making no serious effort to bring them back. I think if it's going to happen, Paul, about half a lap into the next lap the chase will start, maybe even later.
I think they would like to wait until around about between 15 and 25 kilometres to go, because that's the point when they know they will still have the firepower in their squads to be able to lead out the sprinters coming down to the final kilometre. And it's important, it's going to be extremely important today, the positioning of your riders coming around the final 300 metres into the finishing straight. That was the corner that they went round there at Williamstown.
Heading back down towards the banner, a few kilometres down the road, and then they'll be out on their second full circuit. So not too many difficult challenges on this lap, just undulations, and that's why the chase, when it begins, I think will be very, very quick indeed, and it'll be a sudden death pickup. Big Will Clark there, 32 years of age, he'll be 33 in April. Tall man and a strong man. He's won 9 professional races in his career, and now he's on the World Tour team. He's had the privilege of riding in the Tour of Spain, where he finished 157th in 2017. That was his first big crack at the Grand Tours. The Grand Tours, by the way, are Tours of France, Spain and Italy. There's only 3 of them.
Nasty little bend as they take another left-hander as they start to line themselves up for the main road back into Lindau. And when they get up here this time, there'll be 2 laps to go, and that will, on the finishing line, it'll be 52 kilometres from the end. The gap at 3 minutes and 20 seconds correlates to around about 2 kilometres of separation.
So 2 riders in the lead. We're heading up towards Lindau, where we'll have 2 laps left to run. South Australia is the perfect place to try something new, like glamping in the stunning natural environment of the Flinders Ranges, which you can then use as the perfect base to explore the national park's 540 million year old landscape. Or for a true luxury experience, check into the Southern Ocean Lodge, set atop a secluded cliff along a rugged stretch of Kangaroo Island's coast. It's the ultimate in sophistication of being lost in the wilderness of this great southern land. And right now our 2 leaders might be feeling a little lost themselves because they're in South Australia, and the Kangaroo Island, by the way, is very much part of South Australia. It's about a half-hour, 45-minute boat ride offshore from the attractive town of Yankalilla.
Well, I tell you what, it's not exactly a small island, because it's creeping inside of 5,000 square kilometres, and in fact it's Australia's 3rd largest island. But they tell me it's not really an island. It's in fact still a part of the continent which is connected, and there's just a little bit of sea came in between the middle.
Yeah, but you try walking out there.
Yes, it's a little bit too deep nowadays. Now that's an interesting change in tactics, because Bora Hansgrohe have decided they want to come to the front and start to wind this race up. The gap's still hovering at over 3 minutes, but with 57 kilometres to go, coming inside of 40 miles to the finish, Bora Hansgrohe decided they've got, well, we still don't know whether it's going to be Peter Sagan or Sam Bennett or Jay McCarthy.
All names who could really shine, that's for sure. Jay McCarthy could provide us with the big surprise here. Another rider who could probably do very, very well, because he's a very good sprinter and he's looking to be a one-day rider as well this year, and that's Nathan Haas, who's now joined the Katusha Alpecin team. Here's his hopes for this year's race.
I'm excited to be in the mix again. You know, I'd really like to come into this season again with some fun results here at Tour Down Under, but you know, it's always hard to look past guys like Caleb Ewan for all the sprint stages, and then, you know, Richie looks like he's back at his birth weight, and we just hope he doesn't lap us at Wollonga. So I think, you know, this race is it's harder to win now that you've got these guys that seem to just win, you know, the whole sprint spectrum and then the whole climbing spectrum. But I think the stage to Uralda, I think that's how it's pronounced, I think that's actually going to be maybe the stage where we see a different type of winner this season, and also I think Sagan looks like he's in better form than he was last year, so don't be surprised if you see him bouncing around on stage 2.
He's deflecting everything. I love that term about Richie Porte. Back at his birth weight, he was probably born about 3 kilo. Mind you, when you look at him, Paul, he does look about 3 kilo.
I tell you, only an Aussie could come up with an expression like that. It takes me back to one of the famous interviews I did with Neil Stevens, one of the team managers of Mitchelton Scott, when I asked him why he worked as a domestique, and he's just Yes, mate, it's as clear as mud.
Yes, but Nathan has taken clever note there of some of those riders, and I think one of those will be the winner today. We'll see how he pans out.
Well, it's obvious in the first part of the season, the first race, everyone really trying to hedge their bets. I mean, even the day before the People's Classic, Peter Sagan was really playing down his chances when we interviewed him. And then even last night when we talked to him at the VIP dinner, he was saying, well, he didn't know how his form was. He wasn't yet at his best form. Obviously, Peter Sagan, at 95% of his best form, is still 100% better than anybody else.
Just looking here, though, with the Bahrain Merida team, all those boys in the red jersey with the back band around them, they've brought this year Domenico Pozzovivo, who certainly is a candidate for overall. But what about a sprint finish? Maybe Manuela Buaro, chance for the sprint?
Or Raimundas Navadauskas. He's got a very good turn of speed when he wants to. But for me, Andre Greipel on the far side, just looking at his face when he got to the end of the People's Classic, he was... I mean, he's been racing for a long time, Andre Greipel, but he's still motivated and he still wants to try and get himself the victory. That's Greipel there with the golden reflective glasses on, being attentive and being up to the front end of the peloton.
Yes, well, they're clearly going to take the race on. Nobody showing any respect at all to the Queensland missile, Caleb Ewan. 54 kilometres to go. Still feel as though they've got this race very much under control. Little chat going on there now. Damien Howson being told to come to the front. Well, I think he's done his share of work at the front today. Been there all day. These are the two leaders. Will Clark, Big Will on the front in his 7th Tour Down Under. A young man behind him from Cape Town in South Africa. It's his first visit to this continent, and he's looking completely at home. At least we know the weather in Cape Town, Paul. It rivals South Australia, so he looks calm, cool and collected.
He certainly does, and Cape Town also coming into the summer months. There is Andre Greipel. An incredible record when you think about it, really. It's 16 stage victories in his participations here at the Santos Tour Down Under, and I think Andre would be happy to get one more.
I think he knew you were talking about him then. Looked straight at the camera. 16 stage wins, yeah.
Look at his heart rate, though. His heart rate is hovering on around about 100. Now, that is very low. He's not putting any stress on his body at the moment. When he goes down towards the final few kilometres, that heart rate should start to creep up to 140, 150. But here, for me, he's looking very comfortable.
Yes, and let's remember he's 2 teammates down, and this race has only just started today. 2 riders unable to take part.
But he's still got a couple of very solid riders alongside him. He's got Adam Hansen, he's got Marcel Seberg and Lars Bak. Those are big, strong riders who've ridden with him for many years. That's Adam Hansen just on our far side, and Marcel Seberg just closer to us.
Next year, Adam will, this year rather, in the Giro d'Italia, Adam will ride his 20th consecutive Grand Tour. Absolutely unbelievable. If you add all the weeks together, it's in the region of 60 weeks of cycling, and that's over a year he's spent just riding 3 races.
That's amazing. And we're looking at the current speed of Adam Hansen. Thank you very much for that, because his current speed 45 kilometres an hour, so they are starting to crank up the pressure in the main field. That's about 27.5 miles an hour. And all of this information is being provided to us by Velon, which is the organisation of 14 of the top major World Tour teams who get together to provide background information. They're very careful on how they give out that information, because they don't want us to have that information for much too long, and they don't want the other teams to be able to get access, because you would be able to figure out from some of these parameters whether a rider or a team is starting to weaken. So they give it to us for a little bit of indication, but obviously it was interesting to see that Andre Greipel was only hovering around about 100 beats a minute.
A normal human being of about 60 years of age is probably beating at 100 beats just walking down to the sweet shop. This guy's 52 kilometres from the finish of this opening stage of 145 in the Santos Tour Down Under, a race which started back in 1999 because they asked the people of South Australia when they lost the Formula One Grand Prix to their local rivals in Melbourne in the state of Victoria, what they would like to see instead of the F1. And they said a cycle race like the Tour de France. Well, the only thing it isn't is 3 weeks, because its organisation is second to none. Minute 55, we're inside 2 minutes. See, some people just have to get on with the work, even though the Tour Down Under is going by, but the public really do take this race to heart.
2 hours 34.
Mid-stock having a smile here.
In fact, just looking at that moustache that he's sporting there, the reason he in fact is sporting moustache was he had a very nasty crash in Paris-Roubaix last year, and he wasn't able to shave because of the injury that he got when he fell on his face. So in fact what he decided to do was to grow that moustache. And the only moustache in the 1980s, there were only 1 or 2 riders who raced with moustaches, and one of those was one of the great big sprinters and from Switzerland, Urs Freuler.
Yeah, you're right, he looks like Urs Freuler. I hadn't thought of that, yes. Very nice bike rider, Robbie. He says, he says we got him interested in cycling when he saw a television race, a televised race we were commentating on, and he started cycling. And now look at him, a World Tour pro. That's terrific. Not too far away from seeing the end of a lap. You can see there's no urgency here, and you can see the teams doing the work as well. So they are ones that believe they can take this race out. The big teams playing the game, shall we say, they're putting one rider into the front just to show the part of the race as we line up. Let's pass under the banner. 50 kilometers to go. Lots of bells. There are always lots of bells on this race because they give them away.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's nice to have a South African rider in the breakaway, and I'm pretty sure that I could just hear a vuvuzela in the background.
Nothing would surprise me down here. 2:38, something like that on the clock as we went underneath, so they're coming down steadily. Little feeding musettes, they're called, full of their favourite goodies just to get them through to the finish.
Yeah, we're now looking at around about an hour and 5, an hour and 10 minutes to get down towards the finish, and we'll start to see a lot keener pace-making being set at the front. But it comes now down to the game of chess or the game of poker as to just who is going to start the organisation.
Well, we'll find out soon, because this could be a crucial second circuit.
Well, as we look down here at 4 kilometres to go, we now realise this is coming up to the second sprint point of the day. These two riders still holding on to an advantage of around about 3 minutes over the main field. I'm now joined in the commentary position with Robbie McEwen. As we start to go down to this group, Robbie, you can see all of the sprinters now starting to get themselves pretty much organised. This is the moment when you have to really have full concentration.
It's getting to that pointy end of the race. The pace is going to start to pick up as they want to wind these riders in. You can see that happening just moments ago. It was around the 3-minute mark, and pretty quickly that has dropped now under 2 minutes. They're not going to catch them for the next intermediate sprint, I don't think, but riders certainly starting to get more switched on, ready for the finish.
Yeah, but it was also interesting the last time they went through the sprint point, how attentive and how aggressive opportunists were to jump away from the main field just to try and grab third place and a single second. A couple of questions are coming in, and let's not forget, you can ask Robbie if you go onto Twitter. Do you think Peter Sagan is better prepared this year than he was for last year's race? And that was sent from Peter Paul.
Well, Peter Paul, I think yes. To put it simply, just slightly. We saw him get second 3 times last year, and I think he's come back intent on winning something, and Sunday night tells us, yes, he is a little bit better prepared. Maybe he's just done a little bit more sprint training, a little bit more intensity to be really ready to go first race of the season.
Yeah, well, don't forget, it's a hashtag Ask Robbie, and I think we should have another question coming in there. This is from Jamie Johnson. How can anyone get motivated to be part of a breakaway, or don't these guys get a choice?
Well, there's always the choice, because you can not go and make the excuse that, oh, well, I just couldn't quite manage to get in it. But you've got to understand that not everyone has an opportunity to win the stage in a sprint, nor are they going to win a mountaintop finish or ride for general classification. So they get out there and they try and get something out of the race. And for Dlamini, well, he's going to wear the King of the Mountains jersey. He'll make a podium appearance this afternoon for a neo-professional and for his team. That's a really important thing. And Will Clark, this is not just a show breakaway. We've seen him win a stage in this situation in Stirling a few years ago. But sometimes they're told you've just got to get out there, hop to it, and get yourself in the breakaway.
Well, it wouldn't be Australia if we couldn't find a kangaroo or two out on the roads at the side of the Santos Tour Down Under. There's the left-hand turn now, as the gap is hovering at 2.5 minutes.
Two minutes 35 alongside us now, Robin McEwen, who's come through from the start area. Nice crowd at the start, Robbie, today.
Phil, I was surprised. There was a huge crowd in Port Adelaide, and the development that's going on down there, new buildings, new residences, it was looking fantastic. And yeah, plenty of people really keen to see the riders on this first day of the World Tour of 2018.
Well, it's a perfect day. The sky's blue. It is warm, but it's not as warm as we know South Australia can get. So let's hope it stays like this through to the finish.
Well, we've talked a lot about 3 sprinters, Andre Greipel, Caleb Ewan and Peter Sagan, but this year, just looking down the list of riders, there's some pretty fast finishes here.
We've got some very handy sprinters here in the race outside of those 3 guys we've spoken about so much. And if you look at the results from Sunday night, the People's Choice Classic, you don't have to go down very far to discover Elia Viviani, Olympic gold medalist in the Omnium on the track, but he is a very fast finisher. He's won a stage in the Giro d'Italia before, and he is capable of taking those guys on and beating them. And he's desperate for a win because he's new to the Quick Step team, replacing Marcel Kittel, who's moved across to Katusha. He's very keen and would love to get one. Today's a great opportunity for him.
I think he will try. You're absolutely right. I was with him in South Africa in the month of December. We opened a bicycle shop actually in Pretoria. And do you know what? His dedication to training is simply unbelievable. Here, Paul Sherwin's mentioned the fact he's borrowed a track bike and he's trained on the velodrome. But in South Africa, he caught a plane that's up at 5 o'clock in the evening because he wanted to go training first. Flew, which is 2,000 kilometers, about 1,200 miles. Flew to the bike shop, came in, opened the bike shop, went to bed for 3 hours, caught the 4:30 a.m. flight back to Cape Town so he wouldn't miss any training at 6 o'clock in the morning. That's how dedicated he was.
That's what it takes if you're going to perform early in the season. And something like that made me think of Jay McCarthy, who I've picked as a big favourite for the overall in this race. I saw him put something on social media on Christmas Eve, and on his bike computer was showing 6 hours of riding.
Ouch.
200 kilometres on Christmas Eve. That's the sort of dedication that these guys are prepared to put into it to be successful at this race.
Well, good luck to them. They are professionals, and I guess you've got to do your job. We're 1 kilometre out from the second sprint on the course before the big sprint down to the finish. Will Clark, he's got 3 seconds in the bank already. Another 3 would be very nice.
Yeah, but what I'm again going to be interested to see is what the reaction is going to be in the main field behind, because we saw 3 guys are jumping clear of the peloton just to chase after a single second.
Yeah, because they know it can change the destiny of the final. Ochre jersey, by the way, is the colour in the Santos Tour Down Under, not yellow as in the Tour de France or pink as in the Giro d'Italia.
Well, Rui Costa's handlebars realise how important they are, because he gave them a right bashing after that sprint point. Missing out after all that effort to Restrepo. Both riders, the shadow favourites, finish high up in the overall.
Well, when I spoke to Rick Van Slyke, the team manager for Quick Step Floors last night, not only did Elia Viviani ride on the track, but also Michael Morkov rode on the track here at Adelaide Velodrome, and that could give them the advantage, because this is a little bit different to the race on Sunday, and it's also different to the race the first stage last year, because we had 1 lap removed, so it's a longer race, and it might suit the more experienced older rider.
Well, Morkov, he's a noted track rider, very good in the 6-day races, and Viviani will really rely heavily on him to pilot him into this finish and get him in position. As we see these 2 riders now come to the sprint point, well, they're not sprinting because they're dividing the wealth.
And that means that Will has got himself 6 seconds in the bank now. Now, the winner of the day will receive 10 seconds. So obviously the winner, if they all finish together, becomes the automatic leader of the race. But if there was to be a slight gap, and Will was off the front by a couple of seconds, then he'd pull on the leader's jersey tomorrow. It's a tough call.
Well, he's pulled up 6 seconds advantage. Nice little chat. Well, it's nice to have Will Clark.
What he was saying?
No, not really. But I think he was just trying to explain how the race route was and where they were going from here. 26 miles to go to the finish, 2 hours, 2 minutes and 12 seconds advantage.
Well, I think Will Clark was saying to the young professional, Dlamini, that, listen, we haven't got much of a chance. They are going to chase us down. We've got to get a little bit tactical. It's sometimes the harder you fight, the less headway you make, and the peloton accelerates to bring you back even quicker. If you almost start to drop back towards them, the peloton will think, wait a minute, we don't want to catch them yet. Let's back off even more. Then you'll see Will Clark really step into it, pick up the pace. But they're going to lose a big chunk of time now, because it looks like Jay McCarthy is interested in this 1 second. See the Bora Hansgrohe teammates up here. So these are all the GC hopefuls trying to get this 1 remaining second.
Well, McCarthy is the man. He finished 3rd overall in this race, and we know he's got great form.
That looks like Restrepo again, though. Look at the wattage, though. This time on Diego Ulissi, it's going up to almost 800 watts.
Well, we've got McCarthy trying to... Oh, dear, no. 1 second's good enough for Restrepo.
I think that factor was Nathan Haas.
It is Haas. 1:11.
Nathan's got plans on this race, I'll tell you.
And we saw the same 2 riders battling it out last year at exactly the same point on this stage. Haas and McCarthy really locked in battle all week long last year for that final podium spot. You see, Jay McCarthy hit out really, really early here on this sprint. Haas rode the slipstream, saw that red sign, 200 metres to go, stepped off him and came on past. I think Jay McCarthy might have been better to let his teammates really lead him out and just step out for the last 50, 60 metres.
Well, that's Diego Ulissi there in 4th position in the UAE Emirates jersey there. And he was the rider who we were getting the wattage of in that sprint. Not full on, Robbie, just hit leading up to around about 800 watts.
So Nathan Haas, one of the pre-race favourites, has established himself a 1 second time bonus. We won't know for a few days if it's enough.
Welcome back to Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. All the colour and the movement of the Santos Tour Down Under, and we're looking at the Undie Run. Now, the Undie Run, we saw that on Sunday evening, the People's Choice Classic, raising awareness and funds for bowel cancer. And look, that is just part of the colour and movement, and some wonderful charitable events and people in and around the Santos Tour Down Under. And the man that's amongst the people, he is a man of the people, and he is the chief of our fan cam operation, Johnny Stephenson. How are you, my friend?
Thanks, Tim. Great to be here again. Fan cam is about the people, Tim. We actually got a slogan this year. We are with the people, for the people.
Wow.
Fan cam's taking off. We're taking all the finest scenes that South Australia has to offer, showcasing each stage and what the people do as part of the tour.
You're such a giving human. Let's have a look at fan cam from Johnny Steff.
You're all decked out in your undies, of course. Nervous?
A little, yes. This is a little exposed for me, but it's all for a good cause.
Go chase the bubbles, buddy.
So is this your first time?
No, second.
And you brought your son this time around?
We have.
What's his name?
This is Jet.
You guys are not just getting dressed up in your underwear because you love running in your underwear. You actually raised 15k for a good mate who had bowel cancer.
We're up to 17.5k now, actually. A good mate of mine was diagnosed in the middle of last year. This man right here. and we've all gotten around him and we've been able to raise a heap of money, so we're all really happy.
You got any tips? How do I do this?
You need a superhero cape.
I need to find me a superhero cape now. Undies on, cape certified. Time to hit the undies run. Woo! All right, time to go. Off you go! See you at the finish line.
Well done, great man. And the finish, very strong.
All right, undie run done. Plenty more still to come tonight. Women's road race, men's road race. Time to take it all in. Well, this is the first time that the women are combined with the men's with the classic, and I think it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever the men can do, we can do too. We've been trying to elevate women's cycling, and I think something like this today just demonstrates to the public just how well women race, how gutsy they are, how strategic they are, and it's just as exciting.
Come up here, take a load off, have a couple of drinks, watch how fast these guys go, and hopefully watch an Aussie win.
That's exactly right, yep.
I like that. Even though he's English, he still goes for Australia.
It's an amazing event. Great to be here every year. Love it.
Adelaide turns it on, don't they?
It really does. The weather's perfect. You can't ask for more.
It's great to watch like Peter Sagan and a lot of the athletes that are in this race. It's amazing. And I think what Mike Turner and Sandy Pisani have done is pretty special too.
There he is, Johnny Stephenson out there with the people. Took you a long time to get that shirt off, John.
Listen, Tim, I told you our slogan is with the people, for the people, Tim. So I'm out there on the streets. If you see me, please stop me. We'd love to chat with you guys and see what your local town is about. We're going with the tour throughout the whole week. South Australia is a beautiful place to be. So remember, fan cam when you see me, with the people, for the people, Tim.
You've kept the star jumps up. Is there any chance of a comeback? You're not going to respond to my line of questioning.
Wait, let me tell you, tomorrow when you see what I've done today, there's a reason why I got those love handles. So anyway, still
There's
cool.
no love handles. Looking good. Johnny Steph, more fat on the chip. Will we be back for the Commonwealth Games? We'll wait and see. Of course, fan cam all week. We look out for it. Love the bloke. All right, this is the Santos Tour Down Under. Let's get back to commentary. Phil and Paul.
Peloton coming underneath the eucalyptus trees, visibly going quicker now as they start to head back towards Lindok, where this time through they'll get a bell. The gap representing about 1.3 kilometres is about 1 minute and 45 seconds just now. And the guy doing all of the work here, Maciej Bodnar, the man that won the penultimate stage of the Tour de France last July in the time trial. Very strong rider and a very, very close friend of Peter Sagan.
But it's still pretty much the same scenario, one rider each from some of the team sprinters.
Boro Hansgrohe on the front with Bodnar. Just not tucked into his wheel is Eros Kopecky. They're getting 1:45. Hey, we're agreeing on the whiteboard down there. Bahrain Merida, Paul, have sat there the whole race. They've never physically come to the front and set the pace, but they've got a plan today.
No, they've been very attentive at the front end of the peloton. They've got a plan long term. They've got the two Izagirre brothers and Domenico Pozzovivo for the overall standings. But the way they've been present at the front of the peloton, they're looking to try and get something out of this opening stage today.
Day one of the World Tour 2018 and the Santos Tour Down Under in particular. The riders getting to know each other. We're getting to know new team colours, a lot of changes this year and a lot of movement of riders amongst teams as well.
Well, Robbie, when you look at Mitchell's and Scott team, the new sponsor that they've got a really strong lead-out train, but they haven't really had much chance to work it out in competition. Now, is that going to be a hindrance later on for Caleb Ewan? Because, you know, they got it all pretty much wrong the other night in the People's Choice, and Caleb Ewan, I think, maybe panicked a little bit too much and started his sprint too early.
They seem to be left just one man short, and the man that was missing is the Australian National Road Champion, Alex Edmondson. So he's there to lead Caleb Ewan out, but he went missing from the rest of the team. We saw Heyman, we saw Impey, so they were missing one guy, and that did turn out to be crucial because that wind had swung just slightly, become a headwind. They needed to get Caleb a little bit closer to the finish. As he said, he ended up going a bit too soon, got overrun. And it does often come down to just those tiny little things you've got to get right that make that winning difference.
Two quick step boys there. Quebecing grateful to receive that bottle off his teammate. Just have a look at the race update so far as we come into the last kilometres of the race. Straight from the gun in Port Adelaide, 145 kilometres launched, 3 riders up front as they headed towards the only climb of the day. The third rider, by the way, was Scott Bowden in the white, and he went for the points at the top. That was his objective, but he misjudged the speed of the South African rider Nicholas Dlamini, shot ahead and has become the first leader in the Subaru King of the Mountains.
But when we came to the first sprint point at Cockatoo Valley, in fact, there was a launch pad by Laurent Didier to try and get himself clear, quickly joined by Rui Costa and Jonathan Restrepo.
Up front, it was Will Clark taking the 3-second time bonus, Lamini getting second. Then came this sprint for the line, and Rui Costa really wanted it. Watch him bang his handlebar. Oh, he wanted that 1 second, but it wasn't. It was Jonathan Restrepo who took the 1 second.
When we came through to the second sprint, there was no contest again, and Will Clark getting himself the 3-second time bonus. But behind in the sprint for third place, the whole main field looked like a dress rehearsal for the sprint finish.
It did, and it was Nathan Haas registering his name on the leaderboard with a 1-second time bonus. And we think he might be the secret weapon of his new Katusha team to try and take this race out when it finishes on Sunday. Back live with the leaders again now. We're 34.8 kilometres out. Now, as far as I know, there are no bears live in Australia. We do have the smaller version of the koala. He's up the trees, though. So we'll look out across the Barossa Valley. Very shortly, we'll be getting the bell for the last lap. The Santos Tour Down Under is much more than a bike race. It's a festival of cycling. There's also plenty of ways to participate during the week, like the Bupa Mini Tour for kids and the Bupa Challenge Tour, both on the very same stages the pros ride over later in the day. There's plenty to see and do in the Adelaide City Tour Village, and it's also the place the riders prepare each morning. Or you can just explore many of the fine food and wine destinations that enhance the atmosphere during this week-long celebration of all things on two wheels. We've now seen a split in the front group. Just caught at the back talking to his team car there. The Dimension Data rider saw Will Clark race away from him. This is the peloton. We're through the outskirts of Williamstown. We're heading towards Lyndoch, a couple of kilometres down the road, and that's the bell for the final lap.
Yeah, that's 19 miles in old currency, 31 kilometres, 95 seconds the advantage. They can wipe that away in the next 10 kilometres, but I don't think they want to. They probably don't want to catch that two-man, well, the one-man breakaway group until we get down to the last 15 to 20 kilometres or so.
They don't want to make the catch too early, open themselves up to fresh attacks from riders who've just been sitting in the wheels all day long. And the riders on the front, they know they still have to ride all the way to the finish, so just keep their tempo, keep plugging away. But at the moment, Will Clark has noticed that Dlamini lost contact when he was getting that advice from the team director, and he is pushing on with it now, and no sign of Dlamini yet getting himself back in the wheel. And we know Will Clark can really hold a high tempo when he's on his own.
Well, Will is going for gold here, or should I say ochre, because he's taken 6 seconds in time bonus. He's now trying to go it alone. It's a real tough call, but you've got to try it. He's out here now. The South African rider Nicholas Dlamini, if he's got any sense, he should go back to the race now and save his energy to fight another day.
Yeah, because unfortunately, as we're looking here at Will Clark, that was very much a youngster's error. When the team manager comes up alongside you, you usually take that advantage to get a little bit of a rest from the shelter that you can get from the team car. But at 22 years of age, I think we can forgive him that error.
Well, more than Dlamini himself, I would call that a pretty big error by the team director from not noticing, because he's even hung off Will Clark and let the gap open as he's talking to him. All the same, I think that Clark and Dlamini will come in together in the the heart of this peloton. Look at it strung out at the front now. That means the pace really is starting to pick up, because they will have got the signal that Will Clark has gone and he's now giving it everything to have a crack at victory.
90 seconds the advantage for Will Clark now. The white jersey far right there is Peter Sagan. Just keeping an eye, but always well positioned in the peloton. You don't normally catch Peter in the wrong place. Far right of our picture. And the domestics, as we call them, really turning on the pace at the front now.
Well, you can just actually almost see the physical difference in the speed now, as you've got that long line of riders at the front. Just in around about a third of the way down the main field, where that group of riders is bunched together, that's pretty much the sweet spot. If you know how to handle your bike and you have no fear at all, you can sit in the middle there and almost just get sucked along by the wind and the drag that's created by the peloton.
That's right, but then you get some of our GC contenders that would rather spend a little bit more energy on a stage like this. They're not concerned about the sprint, but they want to be safe. And that's what I was thinking when I saw the team of Bahrain Merida sitting up the front. They're looking after Gorka Izagirre and his brother John. Remember last year, Gorka Izagirre crashed out on the stage to Victor Harbour a little bit far back. He was trying to move up, overlapped a wheel and went down really hard. That ended his race. And until then, and it was after Paracombe, that very difficult stage where Richie Porte won, well, he'd been sitting second overall, and that was the end of his tour down under. So they're going safety first, spend a bit more energy, but try and be out of harm's way.
Well, I remember when he came out to race after that crash, he looked like some Egyptian mummy. He was well wrapped up.
Well, he certainly wasn't going to get sunburnt with all those bandages.
Well, the peloton really chasing now, and in fact Delmini is only 250 metres ahead of the pack, so he's going to go back into the field, and that will leave just one man up front in Will Clark and the peloton to chase him down. So around the Barossa Valley, as we see the old disused railway track down there falling. Sadly, it's overgrown now, but it used to deliver the passenger services through here until the 1960s. There's the peloton picked up as they cross the old track. They're still in the row, by the way. You can see them nicely polished. And this is the leader. They're out on the last lap.
In fact, it's Dlamini hasn't yet been picked up by the main field. He's riding along. I think a little bit of youthful enthusiasm here. Once he'd been dropped by Will Clark, he really should have sat up and waited for the main field.
Maybe he just wants to get that extra little bit of applause from the crowd who's gathered here at the finish in Lindau. Just get himself through and say, oh, I'm still here, hello, and then go back into the bunch for 25 kilometres of relative rest. Well, he's going to have to be right on his game to not drop a gap in the final part of the race after expending so much energy out there all day.
Well, how crucial that corner will be next time around, coming off that left-hander with 300 metres to go. You'll need an inside position there in the sprint. There's the clock counting it down. 1:33 it was, and to the peloton 1:35. One lap to go.
And last drinks has just been called as they come through now. The riders are allowed to take drinks on board until 20 kilometres to go in a race. And this is where they get those last bidons.
These guys make it look so easy, but it's not that easy, is it? Taking on board a bottle like that when the helper at the side of the road is stood still and you're coming through at close to 55 kilometres an hour.
Yeah, well, a bit slower at the moment, but yes, even at 40 kilometres an hour, 35, there's a certain technique to grabbing a water bottle and actually hanging on to it. We even see professionals make the mistakes and drop that water bottle and then swear at themselves, line up the next swan you're standing, and then try and get the next one. Problem is then one of your teammates has missed out.
I have to tell you, I was always a bit of a nutter. I used to take two hands off the bar and get one handle behind and grab it at the front. So I probably learned that from playing rugby.
Well, Will Clark will go as hard as he can, and they must race him down. That's what he's saying. He just will hope that perhaps they'll hesitate, make a mistake, and misjudge his catch.
One thing we do know about Will Clark, he is prepared to ride himself absolutely into oblivion in chase of a stage victory. Remember that his famous win 5 years ago in Stirling, he got to the finish line, he won the stage. You wouldn't have known it by looking at him. He did not have the energy to even get a hand off the handlebars and take the victory salute. He was that exhausted. But that's what it takes if you're going to hold off a World Tour peloton.
Absolutely, and we'll see that finish again in Stirling this year. See what Will thinks of it then.
Yeah, that'll be tomorrow, and it's a very hard day of racing. There is his current speed, 37, 38 kilometres an hour, so inside of 25 miles an hour. They are just biding their time now, aren't they, Robbie? They're just waiting for the moment to pounce and for the teams with the big sprinters to get the final lead-out train organised.
The teams would feel now they've committed enough resources to chasing down Will Clark. The guys they've got on the front, there's 3 different teams up there, Mitchelton Scott, Quickstep and Bora Hansgrohe. They've got it under control. They're going to catch him. They'll just save the rest of the team. And when we see a team like Lotto Soudal for Andre Greipel, and they're down 1 man, they're down to 6 riders, they're going to wait, let the others do the work and just really time it. And you've got to come very late on this finish, because that wide, straight open road that brings them down to that 1K to go at that railway line, if you can hit out from there, you get control into that final left-hand bend. It's quite a difficult finish because it's so open, an opportunity to pass left, right and centre. There's so much room on the road.
Well, you can see it's getting a little bit more stressful now. Simon Gerrans, having a quick look at his heart rate, and he's up to 147 beats a minute, so starting to get up there a fraction. That's an indication that the pressure is starting to creep into this field.
And last year's overall winner, Richie Port, he's been in the top 2 for the last 3 years, by the way. Number 1 down there, left red, moving, repositioning himself amongst his teammates nearer the front. Well, the faces are now taking on the poker faces. They don't want to tell anybody how they feel. The pace is on, but it's still Will Clark versus the rest. Helicopter picking out the boys in yellow down there from Holland. Well, we've seen the Dutch corner on the course cheering them on. They've got a candidate for the possible overall in Robert Hessing. Not really too sure they've got a real candidate to win the sprint today. Sagan always stands out in that white jersey of world champion. I don't know whether we'll ever recognise him if he ever loses that title. He's now won it for the last 3 years.
Well, I wouldn't be all that happy if I was his sponsor, because for 3 years now he actually has only worn his sponsor's jersey on 1 occasion, and that was in the time trial at the Tour de France when he had to put the skin suit on. In the time trial at the Tour de France.
Yeah.
I'd like to counter that they're not too disappointed.
I was joking, Robbie.
The crowd appreciating the effort here of the man from Tasmania, that's for sure. They call him the big horse. You can see now he's such a strong bike rider. And he very wisely keeps on taking that fluid down as well. As Robbie said, he's won 1 stage of this race in his 7 visits to it.
Coming to a temperature like this, Roy, we're creeping inside around about 30 degrees Celsius. Now, during the course of a race like this, 90 miles, 145 kilometres, how many bottles will the riders actually drink? Because a lot of the time they take on board a couple of bottles to pour over themselves, but to actually drink in litres.
Well, what they'll get in a stage like this of about 3.5 hours, they would be going 1 bottle at least every 45 minutes, probably closer to a half an hour, because the European riders trying to get used to this heat, their body is just sweating so much to try and stay cool. So probably a bottle a half an hour those guys would be going through.
Yes, the riders made a left here, heading down towards Cockatoo Valley for the last time. To the left it was Gawler, to the right it was Tanunda, and the 2 stage finishing towns that we visited quite a lot over the 20 years history of this race. Bypassing them this time around for the moment anyway, as we just see Bodnar setting the pace. He's been a real workhorse today. Teammate and close friend of Peter Sagan. But when you get to this stage of the race, so many riders, there'll be a few guys think they can break up the sprinters and win it for themselves today.
Again, it's going to be a very nervous sprint, because as we've talked a lot about 3 main sprinters. Caleb Ewan, Peter Sagan and Andre Greipel, but there's still a lot of other guys who can really mix it at that top end speed. Elia Viviani, he's pushing his heart rate now up to 155. That's an indication that this race really is now starting to heat up. Some of these riders, they can push their heart rates up to 180, 190 beats a minute when they start to go really flat out.
Well, starting to go flat out, maybe not quite, but the man on the front, Bodnar from Bora Hansgrohe. I remember last year in the Tour de France in Pau, caught a heartbreaking 185 metres to go. He almost soloed to victory, but he completely made up for it by winning the final time trial in Marseille. And if you're Will Clark, the last person you want chasing you on this occasion will be a guy who's just, his last win was a time trial in the Tour de France.
I'm afraid so. Race radio is telling us now it's 1:15 to Will Clark, so they are closing in, and it's all down to this champion time trialist on the front. Oh, and he swung off. Enough is enough. Mr. Kopecki's turn to start setting the pace, I suspect. And Caleb Ewan just picked him up there. He's number 21 in the Mitchelton Scott to green and black colours down there. As the line is there, the gap is still 75 seconds. And can we see him in the distance? I'm afraid we can. The chase is on. Looking down on the rather harsh countryside here of the Santos Tour Down Under, coming towards the end of its opening day of racing. As we stay now with the race right through till next Sunday, the gap officially is closed. It's just dipped inside 1 minute, which means very shortly we could be setting up a sprint. And the one man that the Michelin team always work for when they focus on the sprint is Caleb Ewan. Here's more on that.
We've had a good all-round team, I guess, the past few years, and we've managed to do the lead-outs well. So I think having the extra guys to help in the lead-out will, I guess, benefit the sprint. So yeah, I think, to be honest, I think we're going to need it this year because the sprint field's so good here. So yeah, it'll be definitely a big help.
Well, I think we're not hiding our cards. We had to win the sprints. Caleb's in great form. Showed nationals. He's right in that front group there, so his legs must be good.
When you look at the team, we got a team to pull for the sprint and lead out the sprint, and him to finish it off. And as he showed at the Nationals over the weekend, he's clearly in good shape and motivated.
For me, it's just about trying to position Caleb in the best position possible. If you can get him to 200, 150 metres to go, then you've absolutely nailed it. So for me, it's just about trying to, every opportunity I get, to put my hand up and make sure that I can deliver him in the best possible shape to hit that finish line.
We're an Aussie team with Aussie DNA, and we want to do well here. I missed out last year on riding and was able to watch from Europe as Caleb wrapped up a number of...
They're very confident with being able to bring him back in. That's why they've left the work to just the three guys who've been doing it, Bodnar, Kopecki and Howson. And if they thought it was getting out of hand, they'll be sending fresh riders up to the front of the peloton to get it really under control. But with just under 11 kilometres to go, and now seeing the time tick away to 35 seconds in front, they're really not worried about Will Clark anymore. They're just starting to think about what they've got to do to get it right for their sprinters.
Oh, take a look at the face of Will now. It's hurting. And well, it might do. He's been in the lead for 132 kilometres so far today. And the lights in the backdrop are telling us that they're closing quite quickly now. I don't think they'll make 5K out.
Well, the one thing that will be very discouraging to him is when he looks over his shoulders and he sees that. He's looked over now and he's seen the whole of the main field. And in fact, it looked as if they turned off the pressure a fraction because they were stretched right out across the road. But Will Clark, he gave his all here. And I think you're right. He's about to run out of gas with around about 7 or 8 kilometres to go.
Yep, he really could try and empty the tank and get a bit closer to the finish, but it's really not worth it. So it's up to him now. He sees them. He knows it's game over for today. So he is actually better off just taking a little breather, getting his breath back and preparing himself to try and hang in there, because he's built up those time bonuses, 6 seconds in time bonus. He will be equal second overall at the end of this stage, if he can stay in the bunch.
That's what he needs to do now.
Well, he's won both sprints out on the course, and he'll also be awarded the most competitive rider of the day because there's no competition in that. as he races towards the end of this opening stage of the Santos Tour Down Under. First World Tour of the season, 10 kilometres out or 6 miles plus from the finish, and they're all waiting now. They're letting him fry in the South Australian sun. They're actually blocking the road. They're just leaving him there. It's the old story, isn't it, Paul? If they catch him, there'll be attacks.
And that's why they're leaving him out there, because it calms the ardours of all the other riders who might have aspirations to try and break the stranglehold of their lead-out trains. The lead-out trains, though, I think is going to be extremely important today, and it will be a battle. And we talked about Mitchells and Scott having a good lead-out train, but you're right, Robbie, it becomes complicated because there's 5 or 6 teams have the same tactic to try and get into that final left-hand bend on the left-hand side.
And I think it may just be a case of who blinks first, who starts too early with the whole team, and which team is cool enough to sit back, wait, let the others burn themselves out a little bit, and then try and take over. We see Sunweb now moving up on the right-hand side in the black and white, whereas for Phil, Newcastle United, I guess Alan Shearer is sitting in last position, waiting to score.
Well, or Nicky Assant.
Or possibly Phil Bauhaus was up there the other day in the sprint, and he copped a bit of a shoulder from Andre Greipel. And Greipel just saying, well, it's a bit more about safety, making sure there was enough room to get my huge body through towards the front. But Peter Sagan followed that huge slipstream and came right out of the wheel and over the top. You see them spread all the way across from left to right. No way through for any want-to-be attackers that may use Will Clark as a springboard to try and have a go themselves.
Yeah, we had Team Sunweb in the black and white on the right-hand side, and on the inside, on the left-hand side, currently holding pole position, the blue and white jerseys of Team Quickstep.
Yeah, there they are. They're leading out Elia Viviani. If they can deliver him, he'd be delighted.
And alongside them, you've got UAE Emirates, and they will be looking after probably Simone Consoni, who actually put a very good sprint in the People's Classic.
Yes, he's only a youngster as well, but he certainly wet his lips there and almost pulled out a top 3 finish, nosed out in the photo by Viviani in the end.
I think Consoni will be hoping for a little bit of help from a teammate, a quite experienced sprinter himself, and well, fast by name, Roberto Ferrari. So there's some sort of pedigree there as a sprinter, and we're trying to help Consoni into position. But I think they will lack the firepower to really do a team lead out. They're more concentrated around guys like Costa and Ulissi for the overall GC.
Bit of a move on the outside there by Roberto Ferrari of UAE Emirates. Has gone straight to the front. Great name for a sprinter. He's not really a great sprinter though, Ferrari, is he?
Well, it's a great name for a professional cyclist.
Indeed. Yeah. All shuffling the pack. All trying not to catch Will Clark.
He may get to 5 kilometres to go yet the way they're riding at the moment. They really don't want to pull him back in at the moment.
Less than 15 minutes of effort to go to the finish, having been in the breakaway right from the very first kilometre. That's a very long line of a blue and white jersey from Team Quickstep. They're waiting. Now, the important thing when you come down to the final stage of a race like this is not to start your lead-out train too far from the finish, not to be overconfident in the strength that you've got, because you still need to have 3 to 4 riders left inside of the last 2 kilometres.
Well, I would even bring that down to a kilometre. At the speeds they're going to be going, as they're about to make the catch of Will Clark, so they haven't seen him for over 135 kilometres. Yep. And he's now being brought back into the fold as Francais de Jeu, FDG, now make an appearance at the front of the peloton, probably for Davide Cimolai, their fastest man. But Clark back in the bunch, and I'll imagine he'll quite enjoy a bit of a slipstream now and being pulled through to the finish. It was a moment ago the calm before the storm. Now it's more that fight for position through Williamstown. They've got that tight corner coming up. You really want to be at the front and not get caught back when some team does start to wind the pace up.
Rapid change of order now. Look at the gaps between the riders, reshuffling their teammates. This is the last tour of Williamstown before it's eyes down for the straight road down to Lindok, just 10 kilometres away.
Well, that's a bit of a surprise to see just sitting on the back there, number 33, Thomas de Gent. He is normally pretty much involved in the lead out for Andre Greipel. And there he is on the left-hand side.
Well, talking about down the back, Paul, I notice almost the entire team of Dimension Data. And a lot of guys, along with Tom Yelter-Slachter, former winner of this race, Ben O'Connor, Lachlan Morton, all climber types who won't be involved in the sprint. But who they do have riding his 16th Tour Down Under, and he's been a stage winner, is Mark Renshaw. And I spoke to him this morning at the start. I said, "And you're going to be amongst it, aren't you?" He said, "Well, I'm going to have a go, but completely alone, I'm going to have to find a way." I expect he might hit out early, lead out style, and see if he can pull a surprise.
Well, there's no doubt that Quick-Step are advertising it on the right here. Their sprinter Viviani has moved them up. There's two possibilities of a sprint winner in the Sunweb, black and white colours there. Just looking around, the Michelin are trying to get Caleb Ewan in the centre behind the team at the moment. They're getting themselves quite well organised.
Just have a quick look at the heart rate there of Viviani, spiking up to 180 beats a minute.
He's excited.
He's getting very nervous, and he's holding last position in that line of blue and white jerseys of Quick-Step on the left-hand side. Now you can see FDJ in the red, white and blue jerseys coming up alongside him, trying to cut position for their man. And now finally there's a little bit of organisation starting to come from the Michelin Scott squad. But in fact, one man has missed out there, and he's just trying to keep his position on the back end of the line of his riders. And that's the 6th rider in that line, sort of down the middle, and that's Caleb Ewan.
Yes, he's having a bit of a rough ride to keep on the tail of his team just at the moment.
And you see the odd one out there, that is Alex Edmondson in the Australian national champion jersey, the white with the green and gold stripes around the middle. That's the man that Caleb Ewan is going to try and surf on all the way in. At the moment, they're just moving themselves across the left-hand side of the road, and that's what a sprinter often wants. Don't give other teams a chance to come on either side. Go on one side of the road, they can only attack you on one side, and it's just one less thing to worry about.
Wow, 68 kilometres an hour as they tried to shuffle the pack. Well, Caleb Ewan has finally found the back wheel of his last lead-out man, which is the champion of Australia, Alex Edmondson, and he's locked in behind him. Edmondson is the light yellow jersey there with the white front, and tucked in, and you can't even see him, behind him is Caleb Ewan.
Just got a glimpse of the speed from Nikias Arndt, and it was 65 kilometres an hour. It hardly looks as fast as that, and that's 40 miles an hour as they start to go over these last little ripples. There's the world champion on the right-hand side, and as you can see, there is Elia Viviani's team on the left-hand side in the light and blue. Peter Sagan, as often is his way, just surfing up through the middle.
Caleb Ewan here, sitting on the back wheel of Edmondson in the white, number 23, Ewan's 21. He's, I don't know, Robert, he seems to be losing a lot of places here as Quick-Step move their men forward.
Yeah, pace not quite on enough yet to string things out, so riders able to come round on the left, on the right as well. Mitchelton Scott sort of stuck in the middle at the moment. It's Team Astana now on the front of the main part of the peloton, but right over on the right-hand side, Sunweb, well drilled, keeping all together and out of trouble on that side of the road, and almost the peloton dividing in half now.
Just coming onto the wheel of Elia Viviani, just over on the left-hand side there in the red and white jersey, riding with
for those kilometre markers on the side of the road, and this is that little downhill away from Williamstown. So I think you're right, Phil, we'll be closer to 5 than we are to 7 kilometres out.
Speed is on here.
One of the Bora riders over on the left-hand side just put his hand up. It looks as if he's had a flat tyre because he was just trying to control his bike over on the side of the road, so that makes him one man down.
He's got a chain problem, in fact, the Bora Hansgrohe rider, and
that's
he's had
Sam
to swing off.
That's Sam Bennett. He would have been the guy who would try to set up for the sprint today, and that is bad luck.
And guess his number? 13.
Number 13, lucky 13 for Bennett. He was 3rd on this stage last year.
Well, they were working for Sam to try and take it out in the sprint. Now it is really down to Peter Sagan to make amends. Oh. And there he is taking a drink, the world champion. He knows, he saw Sam Bennett have the problem. A lot of serious faces now, Rob, as look at the speed we're going past the vineyards in the Barossa. For goodness sake, don't blow off the most expensive grapes in Australia.
Well, that current speed, Andre Greipel, 62 kilometres an hour, and this is the lead out still with a few kilometres to go, trying to get a handle on exactly how far out we are. But I am sure, Phil, we are inside that final 5 kilometres. Mitchelton Scott now prepared to hit the front, so they don't go too early. They like to time it just right. 155 beats a minute for Andre Greipel. I can assure you, when he gets going out of the wheels, that will spike right up towards the 200.
He's centre of our screen at the moment. Red tops, white bottoms are the team colours there. New colours for Lotto Soudal this year. Team Sky, boosted perhaps by the great finish by Chris Lawless 2 days ago in the pre-race, as we call it. And they're moving to get control of the head of this race now.
We saw last year Team Sky were able to control the lead out through the final kilometre and into that last bend, but Caleb Ewan then tracked them on Van Poppel's wheel and came out. This year he's looking to just use his own team on a conventional lead out. He spoke about how Mitchell and Scott are much stronger for the sprint this year. We're about to find out how much stronger and how well organised. But Lotto Soudal, they are perched right behind Mitchelton Scott, ready to pounce with Andre Greipel.
Greipel, the record holder for stage wins in this tour. 16 stages he's gone. Second man is Robin McEwen alongside me now. He's got 12. They've got control, Mitchelton, at the moment. The world champion centre is in the white jersey. He's moving through on his teammates' wheels. Peter Sagan, seen their sprinter have a problem with the chain. He's going to have to try and take out what would be his first ever stage win in a Santos Tour Down Under.
Well, Phil, this picture now, that tells me they are at around 1.5 kilometres to go. So approaching that railway crossing where they'll get the 1 kilometre to go banner. So the battle really on now. Mitchelton Scott on the right, the yellow shoulders with the black. Out of the saddle now, that's Jack Bauer winding up the pace well above that 60 kilometre an hour sign we see on the left. He swings off and it's over to the next man.
Well, let's hope they don't run out of lead-out men here, because the second rider in line is Alex Edmondson, who's the final man for Caleb Ewan. There's a little bit of handswing there, because that was Elia Viviani trying to get onto it as we go under 1 kilometre to go.
Well, this is Matt Heyman on the front. Daryl Impey a little bit behind, so they've got Edmondson in front of Impey. Edmondson, Impey, Caleb Ewan in third position. Elia Viviani been piloted behind him to the right. Andre Greipel right up here as well. Shoulder to shoulder now inside the final kilometre.
It is Quick Step against Mitchelton Scott. The white jersey of Sagan is a little bit down the line, just on the edge of our picture. This is a perfect lead out at the moment for Elia Viviani in the blue. But watch out, Greipel is tacking on as well towards Caleb Ewan. They've overshot the bend. Leaders have gone down, but they're now sprinting for the line. Where is Viviani? Viviani breaks for the line. Caleb Ewan is after him on the left of our screen in neck and neck. Greipel through the middle. Andre Greipel right is Viviani. Greipel is coming. It's win number 17 and his first of the week. He hit it spot on.
Well, Phil, he got that absolutely right. We saw him track Mitchelton Scott all the way in. He had his eye on Caleb Ewan. He said earlier in the week in a press conference, what do I think about Caleb Ewan? I think there's no slipstream. Well, he found it today.
Hey, what? They crossed the line. It looked to me as though it was Greipel, Ewan, and probably Peter Sagan who came through on the wheel of Viviani.
Well, Greipel has dominated the sprints in this race for so long. He gets number 17. We did see a crash there in that final bend, and I think it may have been Steele von Hoff from the Uni SA team. We'll confirm that. But, quite a heavy crash. No, it's one of the FGJ riders, in fact.
It's your rider, yeah. See if we can pick it up here. Right?
Well, here's the sprint inside the final kilometre, and Caleb Ewan, he went past Impey and said, leave it to me, I'm going to follow Quick Step. They were leading out for Elia Viviani. Caleb Ewan in fourth wheel. Impey comes up next to him, said, do you need anything else? No, I'm right, I'm going to go. But look at Andre Greipel. He lets him go by a length. He lines him up and now starts to go. And right up the middle, clear road, Andre Greipel. He produces more power than pretty much everybody in the professional peloton at the moment, maybe bar Marcel Kittel. But he's got the win today. Sagan coming through for third.
That was the overshoot on the left there. It looks like we only had the one fall off from Française de Jeu. French rider, but there's the sprinter on the right. Viviani must have felt good at this point, but the final surge by Andre Greipel, and Sagan pushes his way in, and you think he probably crossed the line in third place. One win, he says, but add on his other 16, he's got 17 wins at this tour. He's back.
Well, the gorilla flexes his muscles.
Well, there's the happy smiles of Andre Greipel. He's been away from this race for a couple of years, and as a result he hasn't had the great seasons which have followed on from this race, and I think that's why he's come back.
think he's come back because he loves the race for one. And he said, well, my other option was to start only a week later in Europe, where it gets a bit cold. And I just love this race. I've got so much history, and I am really motivated to increase that record tally. And he was quite annoyed that he got beaten the other night. And here's confirmation of our top 10. Andre Greipel, top of the heap.
Yes,
Caleb Ewan.
Ewan, the winner here for the last 2 years, has to be content with second this time around. Sagan squeezed through into third. Viviani pushed back into fourth again. And Consoni in fifth, so fourth and fifth, the same as Sunday's result back in Adelaide, which wasn't part of this race. Phil Bonhouse, another good performance by the Sunweb youngster, in sixth. Nathan Haas right up there in seventh. Montecuti eighth. And the top 10 completed there by Riccardo Minali, who's just like his dad. He's coming through as a good sprinter. Let's see if we can catch up with Paul Sherwin. I think he should be with Andre Greipel. Paul.
Well, Andre, we saw the frustration on your face on Sunday night. That's turned to joy here this afternoon.
Yeah, I think it was a nice one. Pretty fast sprint. Yeah, but I could wait as long as possible, and then could do a nice sprint, I guess.
Well, you stayed away from the Santos Tour Down Under a couple of years, but this is where you seem to get your glory at the start of the seasons.
Yeah, it's always nice to come back here. The races are not that stressful. It's also because of the heat, and yeah, I just like it. And if it turns out also with victories, it's just nice.
It's like turning the clock back, because not only do you get the first stage win, you also get the ochre jersey at the end of today.
Yeah, it's always a nice present after winning the first stage, of course. But yeah, thanks for the team. They set up the sprint really good. Unfortunately, we were already one rider down before the race started, so we just made the work for the other teams. They had to make the chase, and we could save until the final and set a good bunch sprint up.
Congratulations, well done.
Thank you.
Yes, he's not a great talker. He lets his legs do the talking, Andre Greipel, and my goodness me, he's now won 17 stages of this race since he first come here back in 2008. He's also won the race overall twice because of those sprints.
Welcome back to Channel 9's Wide World of Sports, and there he is, this young South African from Dimension Data, Nicholas Dlamini, our Bolle play of the day. He will be wearing the Subaru King of the Mountain jersey tomorrow. What a wonderful effort from him. Just absolutely superb. This young guy from Africa to come out here and make such an impact in stage one of the Santos Tour Down Under. Our Bolle play of the day, and the wonderful people of Bolle. Plenty of people needing sunglasses today. It's been quite warm, and it's going to get hotter as the week goes on. Now, just quickly, of course, Andre Greipel has won today's stage. We're going to talk about that in just a tick. But Will Clark today, Stuart, he was outstanding for a long time.
Yeah, look, Will's got a big engine and a big heart, and you know, he would have done a lot of hard kilometres training over the summer, and he came out with a really objective to do exactly what he did today. Played a bit of roulette, got out the front, got in the break, and then tried to just time trial the peloton to the finish, but unfortunately the peloton was too strong today.
Robbie?
Yeah, well, you know, not everyone can win in a sprint. Not everyone can win a hilltop finish. What's left? A breakaway. And when you look at Will Clark, he's making a podium appearance as the most combative rider, but he's also got himself 6 bonus seconds. So he's going to be in the top 3 overall at the end of today as well.
And a big day for Will, spending almost 130, 135 kilometres out on the road in that breakaway, and a big portion of that solo as well, as we see him just being caught by the peloton towards the end of the race here.
In the past, we've seen him go on and actually win it.
Well, we have in Stirling 5 years ago. He made it to the line solo, really emptied the tank and got all the way. He knew the chances of that were even slimmer today, with the sprinters licking their lips for this finish, and so it proved to be.
There he is. But what about a promoter's dream? You get Peter Sagan winning the People's Choice Classic, and the Gorilla. Here he is, comes out here, Andre Greipel. Caleb Ewan again, upstaged by the older, bigger, more experienced German.
Yeah, well, like the People's Choice we saw, we actually see some footage here of the race finish with Andre Greipel positioned well in the centre as they come around that last corner. And we saw the last couple of years Caleb Ewan taking the left-hand side of that corner, and we saw this year he was shoved over to the right.
We've seen Caleb Ewan, he was saying himself, I think I'll use my team more effectively, we're very strong, but then he went back to what had worked for him the last 2 years, choosing another team. He came off them, but Andre Greipel, he was all over it. He's seen the footage, he knew what was going on, And he said a few days ago, there's no slipstream behind Caleb Ewan, he's too small. Well, he certainly found it today and then just simply overpowered him.
Stuart, he's looking at him, isn't he, Caleb? He's looking out for Andre. He's like a shadow just around him, and it wasn't there last year.
Yeah, look, you know, big Andre, he's got so much experience. I mean, this is his 17th Tour Down Under stage win now. As I said earlier, you know, he's not coming down here for a holiday. He's down here to win a stage. You know, he's been here from the first Tour Down Under. He's come down and really supported the race well. And of course, we'd all love to see Caleb win, being Australians, but I think it's a lot of respect to Andre for coming down and notching up his 17.
And Andre has great presence about him in that peloton, and we could see from the helicopter footage, he was always shadowing around the Mitchelton Scott team and Caleb Ewan. So Caleb would have been very aware of his presence and his eager anticipation to really mix it up with him in the sprint finish.
Well, you talk about that presence. I mean, he's a very big body out there, and when Andre decides he wants to follow a certain wheel, that's where he's going to be, and nobody's got the guts to try and get him off it. They haven't got the physicality
or the
to
muscle
get him
size,
off
yeah,
it
the
either.
muscle mass.
And he's got the power to prove it at the end. And number 17, there's no arguing with that. He's no mug.
And beware the wounded sportsman, because this morning we've got a couple of blokes that aren't quite fit. Someone didn't ride today, and then here he is, Andre Greipel. You know, just has risen to the top and won stage 1 of the Santos Tour Down Under. Now, tomorrow, make sure that you are watching Channel 9's Wide World of Sports. Of course, we are Unley to Stirling, 148.6 Ks, and you can see it on Channel 9. Check your local guides, live streaming on www.9now.com.au. You can get to the website. You won't miss a thing if you're across all the social media platforms that we have, and the stage highlights every night on Gem, and check your guides there as well. Anna, Stewie, Rob, it was great. Absolutely wonderful today, and we're back to it tomorrow. We'll be in Stirling as the weather warms up. Andre Greipel, the gorilla, has won the day. From all of us here at Channel 9's Wide World of Sports, see you tomorrow.